Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Elo Bandit, and today I'm going to be talking about my very favorite metagame of all time, Gen 7 1 vs. 1. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about the metagame from the perspective of a Generation 8 player. So, this is how to play Gen 7 for Gen 8 players. I'm going to be talking about all the things that are banned and allowed in Gen 7 1v1. I'm going to be talking about Mega Evolutions and Z moves, which of course are not currently in Generation 8 in any capacity. I'm going to talk about some Ultra Beasts, some relevant Pokemon for the metagame, and some relevant moves that are used in Gen 7 that do not appear, once again, in Gen 8. So without any further ado, let's hop in real quick. I'm going to give you guys the 10-second version of why things were banned from Gen 7 1v1. I have full videos on almost every single one of these, so feel free to check those out if you want a lengthier explanation. Tapu Koko. Note that the other three Tapus are allowed. Tapu Bulu, Tapu Lele, and Tapu Fini are all allowed, but Tapu Koko is not because it is too fast. It is way too fast, and it has Roost, so it can boost either defensive stat, Roost up, and then smack things with the Z move. Snorlax is banned because Yawn, Protect, Belly Drum is way too centralizing, way too difficult to deal with. You have to hit it with a super effective stab in order to one-shot, and if you don't one-shot it, it's going to put you to sleep, max out its attack, and one-shot you with Double Edge or Z Double Edge. Mimikyu, quite similar to Mimikyu from Gen 8 with the Curse, Sub, Protect spam, but in Gen 7 it has access to Mimikyu MZ, giving it Let Snuggle Forever, a huge base power, I think 200 base power, Z Play Rough basically, that slaps the likes of Mega Gyarados that normally beat the Curse Sub Protect set. Deoxys Defense, not super over-centralizing by itself, but very, very difficult to beat in Team Builder. It's very common that people will put teams together that are somehow 3-0'd by a Deoxys Defense set. In addition to Counter Coat and Iron Defense Amnesia, this thing was also running Z Cosmic Power. So yes, just a very, very difficult to break through wall, and it was eventually banned because of how much it limited team building. Z Detect, the strategy where you would boost your evasion a stage with a protection move, and then spam Substitute until your opponent misses. It was banned because it was too reliant on RNG, despite being less reliant on RNG than other RNG strategies like Sleep and Flinch, but that's a different topic. Banned because, yeah, anything that's totally centered around RNG is generally considered unhealthy. And then Kyurem B was banned because with two sets, which is this Icium Z and Choice Scarf set, it was able to defeat virtually everything in the metagame except for Steel types and some Fairies and a couple of Fighting types, making it one of the most over-centralizing Pokemon ever allowed in Gen 7 1v1. While this was allowed, the whole metagame devolved to Kyurem Black plus Steel type plus Fighting type, and that was definitely not a healthy metagame to play. So those are the things that were banned. Let's talk about what is now allowed. The top of the viability rankings is basically Charizard, both Mega Forms, using Flame Charge or Dragon Dance, some way to boost speed in conjunction with their massive Fire-type stabs, and in Char X's case, Outrage, in Char Y's case, Solar Beam and Air Slash. These two Pokemon, or these two forms of Pokemon, are very, very... It's hard to outclass them, is basically the point that I'm trying to make. If you want a Fire-type on your team, Specially Defensive Charizard X, Physically Defensive Charizard Y are the go-to picks. Megearna is the Steel Fairy of the generation. It basically replaced Mega Mawile as the premier Steel tank, I guess. It's got basically one set that it always runs every single game, which is Z Fluor Cannon, Iron Defense, Calm Mind, and Pain Split. And this set allows it to boost up its relevant defense stat versus a physical attacker like Donphan with Iron Defense, or a special attacker like Genesect with Calm Mind, and then Pain Split off once, and then Z Fluor Cannon for the win. Zygarde Complete, all you need to know is that it uses Coil, and it uses 1,000 Arrows, and it has so much HP and defense that it can tank Outrages from Charizard Mega X, and non-Dragonium Z Dragonite, and things like that. So yeah, it just boosts its stats, gets its ridiculous HP pool from the complete form, and spams 1,000 Arrows until it wins. 1,000 Arrow, of course, knocks foes to the ground, The Z move version is just Ground EMZ. Tectonic Rage always hits after Thousand Arrows is used. Dragonite was the very last suspect test in Gen 7 before the generation ended, and it was not banned. It was kept in the tier. Its primary sets are Flyinium Z Fly, Dragonium Z Outrage, and Firium Z Fire Blast on the special side. But I think this is by far the best set, specially defensive Z Fly with Outrage for coverage versus Dragons, Earthquake for coverage versus Magnets and Heatran, and of course Extreme Speed for that very, very nice priority. The given EVs let you tank an Ice Beam from Timid Specs Greninja. And then of course, Mega Gyarados, the king of 1 versus 1, with Intimidate into Mold Breaker, got 2 of the best abilities in the game. Dragon Dance, Waterfall, Crunch, and Taunt are generally the moves you want to use. There's definitely space to run things like Ice Fang, Earthquake, Bounce, things like that. Gyarados has no shortage of options, but these are generally the best moves to use. Since you can beat things like Mega Slowbro with Taunt and Crunch combo, you can beat Sturdies, things like Crustle and Donphan and Golem with your Waterfall, of course, and then Dragon Dance is on almost every single set, helping you boost your attack stat to a one-shot level. Oh, the one other move I forgot to mention, of course, is Outrage, which is beautiful versus Dragons, versus Charizard X and Dragonite and all that good stuff. So Gyarados, super centralizing, very important Pokemon in the 1 versus 1 Gen 7 meta. Taking a look at a couple more Mega evolutions, since there are no Megas right now in Gen 8. I think they were going to release some in the second DLC, but that is in the future at the time of recording this, so I'm just going to talk about these Megas now. Mega Metagross is very, very versatile. It can beat Mega Gyarados with the given HP and defense EVs and Thunder Punch. That's really all you need. You have your choices of Meteor Mash and Iron Head, Bullet Punch, Zen Headbutt, Earthquake. There's all kinds of good moves for Mega Metagross, but on this set I'm just showing off Thunder Punch for Gyarados, and you want your Steel Stab no matter what set you're using. Mega Gardevoir is typically using this max HP, max speed. Calm Mind, Will-O-Wisp can beat special or physical attackers in combination with Hyper Beam, and then the 4th slot is generally something like Hyper Voice. It can be Encore is really great, Taunt is great, Psyshock is probably the last option. But yeah, Mega Gardevoir, super important Fairy type in 1 versus 1, able to come in on a lot of other special attackers and Calm Mind boost past them, or somehow mess them up with Encore or Taunt or something like that. Mega Slowbro is something to be aware of while you're building and while you're battling. It's almost always going to have a set that looks exactly like this with Iron Defense, Amnesia or Calm Mind, Slack Off, and Scald. This set loses to things like Toxic, it loses to Encore, it loses to Belly Drum, like Belly Drum Charizard X. It loses to Solar Beam Charizard Y, it loses to Specs Genesect, to Special Pheromosa. There are plenty of ways to deal with Slowbro Mega, but it is a wall that you have to be aware of, because its ability, Shell Armor, means that it cannot be crit, so you're never ever going to just get lucky and beat it. You have to actually intentionally bring something to beat it and use that. Moving on to Mega Mawile, this was the Steel Fairy in Gen 6. It is now a little bit taken on a secondary role since Eterna exists, but it's still a very valuable physical attacker to have, carrying things like Sucker Punch, Play Rough, or Iron Head, and then the combination of Taunt and Metal Burst helps it out against a huge range of special attackers, not limited to Eterna. Eterna almost always does lose to the Taunt Metal Burst combo. And with your given max HP, maximum special defense, you can tank moves like Choice Specs, Naganadels, Fire Blast, and KO back with that Metal Burst. So generally you want to be using specially defensive Mega Mawile in Gen 7. Mega Sableye, same type of thing. You want to be running maximum HP, maximum special defense, because with that EV spread and Calm Mind, you can actually boost up on opposing Charizard Mega Y, which is huge. Your slots are basically Will-O-Wisp for physical attackers, Recover so that you can exist as a tank, and then your last move is generally either Foul Play, Snarl, Dark Pulse, or Taunt. Those are pretty much your options for Mega Sableye. Mega Aggron is almost always running Heavy Slam, Taunt, Metal Burst, with often a Rock move for Charizards, since you do have that Sturdy and Rock typing in your non-Mega form. A Head Smash is really great unless Charizard is running Substitute or sometimes Will-O-Wisp. Alternatively, Rock Tomb can work, especially if you're willing to invest a little bit of speed. Yeah, it's pretty much just a Steel type with Heavy Slam and some coverage and Metal Burst. Okay, let's move on to some Pokemon that do not show up in Generation 8. These are non-Sword Shield Pokemon that are relevant in Gen 7. First off, we have Iron Defense, Amnesia, Registeel. This is a mixed wall that can boost up in either direction and take things out in 3 or 4 hits with Seismic Toss. Definitely something to watch out for, something that you have to have generally a Fire type on your team to deal with. Just something to be aware of. Victini is no longer limited to things like Choice Band. It has this really cool Z Celebrate set, which of course gives you +1 to all of your stats. You can take advantage of those stats and use Stored Power. This is instrumental versus all kinds of physical attackers like Charizard X. You can Z Celebrate, you'll boost up your defense stat so that you can actually tank 2 Outrages, and then, Stored Power just messes things up. V-Create is pretty much essential to have, even as generally a special attacker here, because you do want to keep a Fire-type move, and Blue Flare and Stored Power are incompatible. These two do not work together, unfortunately. So generally V-Create is the way you're going to want to go, and then Taunt is pretty much an ideal 4th slot move. Superior is huge. Max speed, max HP. It's a very standard Leech Seed sub Pokemon, but it does have Contrary Leaf Storm that allows it to bust through opposing Stall and opposing Leech Seed style Pokemon. Basically, it will raise your special attack over and over and over until your opponent dies to a maxed out 130 base power stab Leaf Storm. Sometimes you see special attack invest, but more often than not, it's just max HP to be as effectively tanky as possible. Greninja is definitely worth talking about, in addition to several different Z-move sets, Choice Spec sets with Protean. It also has a very, very potent Papaya Berry Torrent set that I want to talk about here. You sub down into Torrent range, your Papaya Berry pops at 25% HP, note the even HP stat, and then you get your +1 Torrent Hydro Cannon that one-shots the likes of Eterna and all kinds of generally bulky Pokemon. Taunt is great versus Stall or any opposing setup, and Haze helps you beat things like Calm Mind Eterna. Diancie is another Mega that's worth talking about, and Diancie does not show up in Sword Shield, so it's worth talking about the Moonblast, Rock Tomb, and Diamond Storm combo. The 4th slot is pretty much up for whatever you want. You can run Skill Swap, Light Screen, Magnet Rise, or Earth Power. I'm running Earth Power on this one, but it's really up to you. This is super great because speed control is so essential in Gen 7 1v1. You always want to keep your speed advantage versus things like Charizard and Gyarados that are trying to boost their own speed stats, so that you can deal damage as you control their speed and then finish them off with the Moonblast or a Diamond Storm. And then we've got Caracosta, a very interesting mixed attacker that I had a showcase on at some point in Gen 7. Shell Smash boosts your physical and special attacks and your speed so that you can Z Aqua Tail versus things that boost special defense, or Z Hydro Pump versus things that boost physical defense. This is a great counter to things like Tapu Lele and Eterna that have options to boost in either direction. And of course, Aqua Jet is nice to have as a priority. Moving on to some more non-Sword Shield Pokemon. Donphan is super critical to know about in Gen 7 1v1, as it is pretty much the premier Ground DMZ Earthquake user with Sturdy. It carries Bulldoze for speed control, helping it beat Eterna. It carries Head Smash or Rock Move for Charizard, and of course Z-Quake is its nuke of choice. Ice Shard helping it out versus other sturdy Pokemon, and things like bulky Charizards. Smeargle is definitely a Pokemon to know. Not included in Gen 8, but in Gen 7 it has this really cool Normalium Z transform set. You guys will recognize Imprison Transform from the Mew era of Gen 8 1 vs. 1. But in this case, it's basically just trying to get its Spore off at maximum speed, put the opponent to sleep, substitute, hope they don't wake up, and then Imprison and Z-Transform. Z-Transform over any other item because it fully restores your HP, letting you take on the opponent as a full HP version of them. Blaziken and Mega Blaziken are allowed. This should be Speed Boost. Protect, Flare Blitz, High Jump Kick, and Bulk Up. Actually, you know what? No, it should be Blaze because you get Speed Boost on the Mega, and this helps you beat Trace users. You Protect on your Mega Evolution turn, so you get Speed Boost, you get +1 to Speed, and then you just KO things with Flare Blitz or High Jump Kick. Your stabs are incredible at beating pretty much everything, including both Charizard forms. You beat Charizard X with High Jump Kick, and you beat Charizard Y with Flare Blitz in Sun. Bulk Up is here to increase your attack and defense, help you out versus things that Flare Blitz and High Jump Kick don't quite KO. Will-O-Wisp is also an option in this 4th slot. Swampert and Mega Swampert. If you're using non-Mega Swampert, it's pretty much just Rindo Berry, which is pretty much outclassed, except versus Solar Beam Zard-Y, by Mega Swampert. Generally uses some form of Yawn, Protect, Earthquake, and the 4th slot can be Ice Punch, or a Rock Move, or Curse, but I find Ice Beam to be incredibly effective at taking out those 4 times Ice Weak targets like Zygarde and Garchomp. You'll notice that there is both attack and special attack investment on this set, with quite a bit of special defense. So this is a very tanky, very versatile pick in Gen 7 1v1. Slacking, less versatile, it's pretty much Choice Band or Choice Scarf, or occasionally a ridiculous PP stall set with Truant, Curse, Amnesia, and Rest. But in this case, the best way to use it, in my opinion, is to just run Choice Band, Giga Impact, with whatever coverage you need to hit things that resist normal. This speed investment puts you 1 point above fully invested base 95s, but you can max out if you are okay with tying max speed base 100s. Mega Altaria is really important to know about because Cotton Guard Roost and Hyper Beam let it defeat a myriad of physical attackers and do really, really well against both Charizard forms, especially if you're running Confide for Mega Charizard Y. It's not required on the set, but this is a very, very good example of a setup Pokemon that is not necessarily boosting its offenses. Altaria is something to consider when you're building, and it's definitely something to consider as an anti-meta threat, dealing very well with Charizard and Gyarados and Tyranitar and all those types of threats. Moving on to some specific Z moves. Since Z moves do not exist in Gen 8 in any capacity, it's worth talking about the specific ones in this video. Porygon Z is using Z Conversion, which boosts all of its stats by 1 and switches its type to the type of move in its first slot. A lot of time you will see Ghost Porygon, although Ice Porygon and Electric Porygon, and I'm sure others exist. My personal favorite is to just stick Hyper Beam in the first slot, so you Z-convert and just you stay a normal type, and abuse all of the stat boosts. But I think the most popular one is probably Z-conversion with Shadow Ball in the first slot, helping you become a Ghost type, while retaining the option of that turn 1 Z Hyper Beam nuke. The last slot is almost always going to be Nasty Plot or Recover. Tapu Lele is using Psychium Z with Reflect to beat Gyarados, giving it +1 to its defense stat as it sets up a Reflect. Calm Mind is great because it lets you boost up versus other special attackers, and of course Z Psychic is your main nuke in Psychic terrain. Moonblast is great, of course, because it hits the dark types that Psychic misses completely. Meloetta with Z Celebrate is definitely worth mentioning. This is one of the best Pokemon in Gen 7 1 vs. 1. You don't always see Meloetta running Z Celebrate. Oftentimes it will be some form of Calm Mind or some form of Specs or something like that. But I think Z Celebrate is probably the best set, giving you once again +1 to all your stats. Letting Hyper Beam hit like crazy, and Uproar is great versus Substitute spam. Your last slot is going to be something like Calm Mind, Laser Focus for a guaranteed crit, or maybe a Hidden Power. I think Hidden Power Fire is pretty nice on Meloetta to hit things like Genesect and Kartana and Ferrothorn. Mew has its own unique Z move, Genesis Supernova. So a lot of times you'll see people using this defensive Fake Out Z Psychic set with Overheat and Nasty Plot tacked on to beat Steel types and I guess Stall Pokemon. This is a super prevalent Pokemon beating things like Crustle and other sturdy users. It's got decent odds versus Charizards, depending on the HP, defense, and special defense investment you have. Genesis Supernova is definitely something worth being aware of. And then Zeraora, while in Gen 8 generally runs some form of Bulk Up or Life Orb or Close Combat or Outrage or something like that, Play Rough. In this case, it almost always uses Electrium Z, Plasma Fists, and if there's a second attack on there, it's probably Thunder. It's almost always using Electric-type moves exclusively, and if it's not, then it's probably Dragonium Z or some really weird set, like Life Orb, Fake Out, Outrage, which can also deal with Dragon types. But almost always you're going to see Electrium Z, Fake Out, Charge, Z Plasma Fist. This is by far the most common set you will run into in 1v1 Gen 7. And then Komodo, another Gen 8 holdover. So this does exist in Gen 8, but it's like a weird sort of defensive body press Pokemon where the Clangorous Soul removes its own HP. Super weird mechanic change, if you ask me. In Gen 7, what it does is Z Clanging Scale to boost all of its stats by 1 and deal preposterous damage as it does so. It follows that up with a boosted Close Combat or a boosted Flamethrower, and Taunt is always great to have as an anti-stall measure. Frequently you will see Substitute here in place of that, but this is pretty much the go-to Komodo set. Special Defense is used to beat things like Choice Specs Greninja. So a couple more Z moves to go through. We've got the Tapunium Z Nature's Madness. This is the Guardian of Alola Tapu Fini. Takes out 75% of the opponent's HP on turn 1, and then Brine boosts its or doubles its damage if the target is lower than 50% HP. So it's just a water type nuke that works extremely well in conjunction with this max HP attack. Taunt beats Stall and things that are trying to set up, and Moonblast is great versus dark types and things like that, but it can be switched out for Icy Wind if you prefer the Icy Wind Taunt combo, helping you beat other Taunt users. Landorus Therian is very notable as a user of Flyinium Z, since it does beat Gyarados despite a typing disadvantage. A turn 1 Swords Dance followed by a turn 2 Z-Fly will take out Gyarados through Intimidate, and it cannot beat you with any combination of Dragon Dance and Waterfall. The 4th slot is often Rock Tomb, but it can be switched out for things like Substitute or Smackdown or whatever other coverage you can find. Magnezone is important to know about as a sturdy user in 1 vs. 1. Once again, this is a holdover to Gen 8, although it frequently is a Choice Specs or Body Press user there. Here it is back to the Z move. You're going to be using Z Zap Cannon most of the time, since it deals more damage than Z Thunder, although it has less spam ability after the initial nuke. Flash Cannon to hit fairies like Tapu Lele. Metal Sound to lower target's special defense. This is great versus things like Calm Mind users like Eterna. And then Electro Web is your bread and butter. Slow down your foe, remove their sturdy ability if they've had it, and then follow that up with the nuke after you outspeed them. So that's pretty much Magnezone. It runs modest and speed and enough HP that it doesn't die to 3 Seismic Tosses. Primarina is very notable. Also a good Pokemon in Generation 8. I believe it is still pretty much at the top of the VR in Gen 8. The Gen 7 version has Primarinium Z, Sparkling Aria, which is a huge base power water type move, especially if you get into Torrent range, which is very easy to do if you're carrying Substitute. This set has the advantage of not losing to opposing Substitute, since the move Sparkling Aria does go through opposing subs. Aqua Jet for priority, Moonblast to deal with dark types like Mega Gyarados, and this does have several other options like Encore, Energy Ball, and probably a couple other things that I'm forgetting right now. Clefable is a super unique Z-move user because it's using a different type Z-move than its typing is. So it uses Psychium Z despite being a Fairy type, using Z Magic Coat with priority to give it +2 special defense, and in combination with Unaware, wall out special attackers. Z Reflect, of course, gives it the +1 physical defense with no priority, doing a really nice job versus physical attackers as well, though it does struggle versus steel types, of course. Moonlight is your only source of longevity if you're using this Magic Coat Reflect set, since Soft Boiled is not compatible. And then your last slot is Moonblast or Seismic Toss. Seismic Toss does much better versus things like Heatran and Volcarona, but Moonblast is pretty much Clefable's bread and butter. It doesn't need to boost its own stats, it can just whittle things down with that 95 base power stab attack. Yeah, not a whole lot else to say. It's Clefable. It works really well in 1v1. And then the last Z-move Pokemon I'm going to talk about is regular Gyarados, not Mega Gyarados. This is regular Dragon Dance Z-Bounce Gyara. Great for baiting in grass types like Mega Venusaur that otherwise would want to come in on Mega Gyarados pick. It keeps Taunt from the Mega set because Taunt is so good in 1 vs 1, and of course it holds on to its primary stabs. So that pretty much does it for Z moves. I'm now going to move on to the Ultra Beasts, which have not been seen or really referenced at all in Sword Shield. So, real quick overview of Ultra Beasts that are relevant. Pheromosa is the fastest. It's got Electro Web and Z Focus Blast, which with defensive investment helps it beat Mega Gyarados. That's pretty much as notable as it gets. Buzzwole can also beat Mega Gyarados in a similar fashion with Bulk Up instead of Electro Web, and of course the Z Lunge. Oftentimes you will see Fighting Z Buzzwole, since it can amazingly take on the likes of Mega Charizard X with that Bulk Up Fighting Z move. However, I think the Bug Z is definitely worth showing off as well. It's got Bulk Up, Roost, Taunt. What more could you want for a physical booster? Nihilego is the premier Charizard, Slowbro, and random special attacker answer, since it does outspeed base 100s like Charizard, and smacks them with the Z Power Gem. Acid Spray is great for taking on walls like Mega Slowbro, since you're always lowering their special defense by 2 as you're whittling away their HP. Sludge Wave is the poison move that actually does damage, and then Mirror Coat, of course, is a great blanket check to special attackers. Celesteela is very notable with the Z Metal Sound followed by Fire Blast or followed by Giga Drain. Of course, Z Metal Sound gives you +1 to your special attack as you lower the opponent's special defense by 2. And this set also has the option of Z Flash Cannon versus Fairy types just on turn 1 of the battle. Kartana is very notable, not only for its Choice Band and Choice Scarf sets, but also for the Grassium Z Iron Defense Synthesis sets. It can run both boosting moves, boosting its own defense versus a physical attacker, and boosting its attack to break through stall. Leaf Blade is really all you need, since you do have the Grassium Z Bloom Doom to use whenever you like, and it's got that high crit ratio, helping you break past things that are boosting defensively themselves. And of course, Synthesis means you'll never die against a physical attacker that isn't a fire type, alongside Iron Defense. So that's pretty much what Kartana does. There are some variations with special defense investment, but really, it's just got such sad stats that you're pretty much out of luck in that direction. And then the last super duper relevant Ultra Beast is Naganadel with the choice specs. This thing has just perfect coverage, honestly. It's got the Dragon Poison stabs, and then Fire Blast is really incredible on a Dragon Pokemon like this. This pretty much outdoes any other Dragon that's trying to click Fire Blast. And then its other coverage is Electric, or Air Slash, or Dark Pulse, or just something meaningless. One move I actually like running quite a bit is Uproar, since you can get through opposing substitutes and completely block opposing rests. So that is Specs Naganadel, very, very threatening Pokemon in 1 versus 1. This is one of the primary reasons that Special Defensive Charizard X is so prevalent, because otherwise it just gets smacked, even in non-Mega form, by that Draco Meteor. And now, finally, I'm going to talk about some moves, some attacks that do not exist in Sword Shield. The first one is Mirror Move. So Mirror Move uses the target's last move against it. If you're using Z Mirror Move, you will boost your own attack before using the Z move version of your opponent's regular move. So you use something like Dodrio or a similar speed flying type, substitute on turn 1, let your opponent use their Z move, substitute again, let them use a regular move, and then Z Mirror Move to KO them with the Z version of that move. I have a whole video on the topic if you guys want to check that out. Return and Frustration are very, very nice when combined with the ability Aerialate on things like Mega Pinsir, boosting their power by 1.2 times and adding the flying typing. So Return, Frustration, Giga Impact, Mega Pinsir. Obviously you wouldn't run both on the same set, but if you were going to use one of them, it would probably be on something like Mega Pinsir. Snatch. Z Snatch Breloom is one of my favorite 1 versus 1 sets ever. This gives you +2 speed and steals the effect of support moves opponents are trying to use. Please note that Snatch outspeeds Fake Out. You can use this before, like Lopunny or Zerg. If something is trying to use Fake Out on you, you can Z-Snatch before that goes off, which is hilarious versus the Mega Lopunny matchup. You Z-Snatch, you Spore, and then you just Sub-Seed Stall forever with your Leech Seed, increased speed stat, and Substitute Spore combo. So yeah, Z-Snatch, hilarious tech, worth talking about for sure. Hidden powers are super prevalent in every single tier, not just 1v1, but I'm going to talk about a couple specific Pokemon here. Ultra Beast Xurkitree is a great example of hidden power Ice, since it does not have an Ice type move otherwise, and it has a massive special attack stat that it's trying to take advantage of. So this is a pretty basic Air Balloon, Tail Glow, HP Ice set that can take on a lot of Dragon types and things that are 4 times weak to Ice. Energy Ball, of course, is great for hitting ground types that want to smack the electric type Xurkitree. And then HP Fire is great on special attackers like Mega Ampharos that don't have any great options versus the likes of Kartana and Genesect and Ferrothorn. It just gives them that little extra flavor that they can take on a wider range of threats, despite not having a huge special move pool themselves. So yeah, hidden powers, super prevalent. Of course, there's more than just Ice and Fire. We see Grass and Rock and several others used, but I think Ice and Fire are probably the 2 best examples for the purposes of this video. Natural Gift, unfortunately, was removed in Gen 8, but in Gen 7, this gives a move, a power and type based on the user's berry. And in Weavile's case, this is the Mickleberry, giving it a Rock-type attack with 100 base power, allowing it to beat the likes of Charizard X and Y, combined with Fake Out Sub, and sometimes Ice Shard. This is a hilarious set. I did a full video with it alongside a Regisurp core. It is one of the funniest movesets ever. Natural Gift is very underexplored in Gen 7 1v1 and definitely is worth checking out. And now we're on to our very last batch of non-Sword Shield moves. These are the last things that I think you should know before I think you're ready to play Gen 7 1v1. First off is Heal Block. This gives you +2 to your special attack. So this is Latios's way and several other Pokemon's way to deal with stall while they boost up their offensive stats. So Heal Block is pretty notable for that +2 special attack boost. In a similar vein, Z Captivate That's right, Captivate, not Confide. Confide is always an option, but I'm talking about Captivate, which was removed in Gen 8. Lowers the foe's special attack by 2 if opposite gender. It also raises your special defense by 2, regardless of the opposing gender. So this is a very powerful move to have on a special wall like Illumise, or Illumise, I don't know how to pronounce it. Roost, Encore, and Infestation are going to be your core moves here. Chip Away is a pretty notable move. There aren't a ton of users of this since Snorlax was banned, but I'm just using Vigoroth as my example here. Chip Away is nice because it ignores the target stat changes, similar to Sacred Sword, and if you combine that with any sort of boosting move, you are going to have a great time versus opposing stall Pokemon. Heart Stamp is pretty much just notable for Jirachi. In Gen 8, it's running Zen Headbutt because Heart Stamp was removed, but it is allowed in Gen 7, so this is a 60 base power, 30% flinch chance that goes up to 60% with that Serene Grace. It's basically just your counterpart to Iron Head for Jirachi's flinch set. Grass Whistle, one of the few moves that I am glad was removed in Generation 8, is a 55% accurate sleep move. This can help you cheese out fire types with your Subseed combo as Whimsicott, and it's just the cheesiest move that ever existed. It's basically a coin flip of whether or not you're going to win or take a free hit, and I have nothing else to say other than be aware that it exists, and sometimes it's used. And then last, and probably least too, is Z Camouflage. This is the very sad replacement to Z Detect, as it will give you a +1 boost to your evasion stat, which you can then take advantage of with Substitute and whatever recovery you have. But in general, since it does basically give your opponent a free turn as you just boost your evasion by 1 and change your type to normal, it's not that great. It's not, super powerful or even viable, really. It's just something that can work. If you really, really want to do the evasion boosting strategy, this is how you would do it with the Z Camouflage. Okay, so those are all of the relevant Pokemon Mega Evolutions Z moves and removed moves from Generation 8. I feel like this is a pretty good starting point for those who want to jump into Gen 7, available right now on the ROA Spotlight. So if you guys want to use any of these sets, they will all be pasted in the description below, and I hope to see you guys on the Gen 7 ladder. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.